just go straight to your essay. And you open it with a fairly, let's say, bleak portrait of news fatigue, which you write affects 1 in 2 people in France. News fatigue has 3 main consequences. First, loss of interest amid a great number of messages and notifications. 2, discouragement when faced with a world that's become so complex that one has the impression that one needs to be an expert to understand anything. And 3, the feeling of powerlessness in response to phenomena that we feel like we cannot change. Even journalists, contemporary journalists, you write, are no longer checking the news cycle. I mean, it's been bad, we could say, for a while. Why is now the time to say enough is enough? Why write this essay now?
Well, thank you very much. And thank you for being here, despite the strike and the general demonstration. No, well, in fact, this essay was, let's say, written for young people, but can be read by everybody, I guess. And because if you take my generation, we took news or information for granted. And it was really simple to be informed. You know, you went to a place where information was produced, so a newspaper, a radio channel, or a TV channel, and you would listen, or you would watch, or you will read the news. And I think it was, you know, like what we say in France, la prière du matin, the morning
prayer.
The morning prayer. So we took for granted that everybody, little by little, would be informed. And the Enlightenment, most of all, made this hypothesis that information was good. And why was information good? Because it would allow us to be free. Why? Because it would allow us to exercise our free will, understanding what was going on around the world, understanding how the different powers would exert their power. It gives us the strength and the ability to control the powers and to make choices as far as democracy or policy was concerned. So information was good, and so more information was better. And the more you would be informed, the more able you would be to exert your free will, and the better off the society and our countries would be. And I still believe that. But then the interesting thing is that we started to, I'm also a professor of journalism in Sciences Po, and we started to carry on research around young people, and at a moment 2 phenomena came from that research. First phenomenon, the certainty that you don't have to inform yourself, it's not an effort, that the news or information will reach you in a way or another. We have our smartphones, we have our screens, so at a moment or another, I will know that. I will know what's happening in the world. It doesn't require me to make an effort. It doesn't require me to do something specific. I will be informed. So information was not the result of an act, but a state of mind. I'm informed. We are informed because we are connected every day. And the second phenomenon that was really that was shown after that research is the news fatigue. You know, so I'm informed, information is reaching me, but I have too much information. I'm fed up with that. I don't need to know what's happening in reality. So in fact, it seems to me that the question we have really to ask ourselves, and I try to address in that short essay, is that have we reached a moment where you know, there is a kind of law of diminishing return in information? Too much information now is too much, or too many news. And so at a moment, the amount of information we are exposed to does not allow us to exert our free will, but because it produces this news fatigue, it provokes, at the reverse, a kind of retreat from what's happening and what's going on. So when we ask young people, or even, let's say, people of all ages, if they're feeling this news fatigue, in France, we have, as you said, almost 33% of the people that resent news fatigue, one young people out of two. And the Reuters Institute from Oxford University also pointed out that news fatigue was a general phenomenon in our countries. So this is what we are witnessing today. And my feeling, and I don't want to be too long, is that we have three explanations about that. Is we don't know what an information is anymore. And so we have to explain that information is not a message, a testimony is not information, an opinion is not information, a belief is not information. Information is a product of a human activity, and we should be able at a moment to define what information is, and it can be useful to define what information is. The second thing is, I think, because, and maybe we will be talking about it, because of the change, let's say, of the media and general message landscape, that the digital economy and then the social networks have brought us. We need a little bit to change our effort to get informed. Before, you could go straight to the place where you are informed. Now, and I try to push a little bit that word, we have to be able to have some discernment about the message we are confronted to. And the third thing is really, so define information, try to understand what discernment is, and maybe remind people what's the use of information? What is à quoi ça sert? What is the use of it?
Yes, and we're going to get onto that, but I want to spend a little bit more time talking about this discernment, because as you point out, Bruno, as you kind of just said, there are all these different types of information: messages, alerts, notifications, actual articles, etc. And you say, of course, that they're not all equal, and you point to this process of verification. You call it discernment. Can you tell us about the VIA? That's the English acronym. What does that stand for? And how can it be useful for us as we navigate this all-encompassing world?
So in fact, information, as I told you, and as you mentioned, is a product of a human activity and can be defined through three letters that we use in English: the letter V, the letter I, and the letter A. V, because it's a message that has been at a moment verified. And so if I have an opinion like that, it's not verified, it doesn't apply. Okay, verify. The second thing, which in English we said independent, which I would say in French, not indépendant, but désintéressé. It means that the sources or the person that really produced the message does not have a personal interest in producing this message, or a financial interest, political interest, whatsoever. So whenever, it's always what we teach to the students, if you are going to be a journalist of something happening, you cannot be the actor of that event. It's not possible. I cannot at the same time demonstrate and be the journalist about the demonstration. I cannot at the same time fight the war and be a journalist about the war. If you want to inform people about something, you have to be désintéressé, independent about that story going on. It's very important. And I think today, the I letter is one of the letters that is less respected, and we have forgotten about it a little bit. And so it seems, so the question is not to see if somebody has a press card, is a press card holder, or who that people is working for, but is he really désintéressé or independent from the thing which is going on? Which is not to say he doesn't have an opinion about it, that it's something else. Journalists have opinion, of course. We will talk about it at a moment. Independent is not objective. Objective doesn't mean anything. Independent says so, and don't have a personal interest in that story going on. And the third letter is the letter A, accountable, accountability. If you produce information on a professional level, you have to be accountable for that information. That is, your responsibility must be engaged when you publish that information. Your personal accountability, but also the accountability of the institution you're working for. So a message that is just published on social networks without being verified, where I have an interest, a personal interest about it, and I won't be accountable for because I just publish it, has nothing to do with information. And so if you have these three letters in mind, it's rather not easy, but then you can try little bit by little, understanding how your discernment should work. So what is, because maybe allow me 30 seconds about it. What is the big difference between information at the time of social networks and information without social networks? Two different things, in fact, and maybe a third one. The first major different thing, the first major difference is that, as I told you, in the ancient world, you would find information in the place it would belong. You know, we lived in a lot of communities where you have a rule of speech in every. You speak in a cafe, like in a cafe, then you speak here, like in front of an audience, and the information would be published in information media. So the place where you would find something, or the place where you would talk, would give you the rule of the speech that you would use yourself in order to be in that place. So, but social networks, and I have to say, I love digital, so I have nothing against digital. But social networks, in fact, I call them the giant mix. Because in fact, what the real disruption in social networks is that everybody is mixed. Every kind of message, is mixed in those social networks. You have information, of course. You have expertise. You have beliefs. You have jokes. You have friendly messages, hate messages, love messages. Everything is mixed. And the whole generation before, the young generation today, was not accustomed at all to have those things mixed in the same place. We had Chinese walls everywhere in order to give you like label to say, here we will be speaking seriously. It's the American Library in Paris, so we will try to speak seriously. We go to the cafe there, we will talk friendly, and we'll share jokes. Okay, and etc., etc. And of course, when I joined Le Monde a long time ago, I had to write like in Le Monde, but all the messages around the thing I had written were written for information and in Le Monde style. Well, in Twitter, in Facebook, in Instagram, not to mention TikTok or WhatsApp, everything is mixed. So you cannot, unless you have some discernment, you cannot take for granted that the message you will read is information or something else. And you know, there is this thing called the Loi de Poe, the Poe law. Nathan Poe was somebody that made, at a moment, a joke. And he published on Twitter a very long time ago, like 10 years ago, a joke about people sharing, you know, the belief that indeed the men and women had been created by God with clay. So in relationship to creationists, and it was a joke. Maybe a joke attacking the creationists, but it was a joke. But the thing was taken seriously by a lot of people that answered that message as being somebody believing the scientific belief that indeed the man and woman have been created by God directly and not obeying the law of evolution. And so this we call it the Poe law, because in fact, what we say is that those social networks don't give you a context that explains the nature of the message. You are bringing the context of the message. So if you think the message is a joke, you will see that as a joke. If you think the message is first-degree message, you will see that as a serious message. And so the context of the social network doesn't give you a clue about the nature of the message. This is why we have to have some discernment about the messages we are confronted to.
There's so much to say, but we need to
Okay,
get to we need to get to the solution part of it. But first, I did want to ask you about the independence part, the disinterested section, because it struck me that, so we're in the 21st century. The arrival of the internet, the arrival of the digital revolution has forced many news outlets to rethink their economic model. So the question, of course, is how to remain disinterested while also staying in business. Well,
this has always been an enduring question, you know, and you can. I love movies, so in this small essay, I have a lot of reference for movies, American movies, because the best movies on journalism are American movies, in fact. But you know, it's always interesting to see that it was always a question of the business model was always a question for news outlets, how to make a living. And if you see, for example, this French movie inspired by Balzac, Illusion perdue, it shows you the press at a moment where, in fact, it was the same thing. And to try to be in business, I would say that the three letters wouldn't be really obeyed by those cultural news outlets that Balzac is describing. So it's not a new question, okay? And let us not say that there's never been a tension between the economic model and the integrity of news. It has always existed through advertising, through a lot of things. But nevertheless, we can say that we have reached a kind of paroxysm with digital, because as you know, we've been. So I don't want to. Okay, let's dive into that. In fact, well, what we're talking about, it's the economy of attention. Okay, so if you look, I don't want to spend too much time, but there is this American historian called Paul Starr that has, sorry, I did it with a French accent, Paul Starr, but I guess Paul Starr has written a wonderful book about the history of the creation of the media. It's the name of the book, about the history, let's say, of the business model of news. And what does he say? I mention it here in the small essay, of course, in a very simple way. But he said that there has always been this tension, but at a moment it was a kind of miracle happened, what he called, which was by chance, with the industrial model of news. At a moment, let's say that general and let's say independent journalism could be profitable at a moment, because the news outlets had the monopoly of reaching a lot of people. And so because they had this monopoly of the ability of reaching a whole amount of people, they were the only vehicles for advertising, and advertising was expanding because of the consumption society. Fine. And at that moment, you could try to make a Chinese wall, let's say, between advertising and content. And you could, let's say, have a business model that would rely on advertising and the fact that from time to time, people would pay something for the news outlet, but not the full price. Digital economy has made this let's say, this miracle obsolete. Why? Because it has separated the ability of the monopoly of reaching a lot of people with the ability of giving some information. So it has not decreased the cost of producing information. It's always as expensive as it was before, but the ability to monetize it has changed. And so I won't be too long about it, but it has gone into two directions. The first direction being the economy of attention being captured by the big platforms, by YouTube, Facebook, or other ones. And those platforms that a lot of time do organize the social networks are completely 100% driven by the economy of attention. And so they have, let's say, captured the advertising part of the news economy. So what remains for the news economy is what I called in French l'économie de l'adhésion, or subscribers economy. And subscribers economy is something that is not very easy to cope with when you're small or small markets. So subscribers economy is a possibility if you have a very defined and niche product, or if you are addressing a very large market. If you have, let's say, you are not very well defined and in a small market, you are in trouble. But let me maybe go back to the attention economy. The second difficulty the attention economy has given to news is the following. Messages are organized on social networks, not for ideological reasons, but for economic reasons. Those platforms want to have, of course, to maximize their turnover. And they want to maximize their advertising turnover because they are, for the moment at least, a free model. So the free model relies on advertising and on the attention economy. So those platforms, and it's absolutely normal, they want to do two things: to be sure that you are spending a lot of time reading or consulting them. And the second thing is that also wants to be sure that you will share a lot of message within the platform in order to maximize the engagement of the other users. So the algorithm into those platforms will organize the messages, not according to their interest, or not according to their, let's say, credibility as far as information is concerned, but they will organize the messages according to their economic efficiency. What is a message that is economically efficient? It's very simple. A message that is economically efficient has to obey to two rules, not the three letters we mentioned before, but the two rules. The first rule, it will, let's say, attract your attention even when you're doing something else. If I send you this alert, this message, you will say, oh, I'm sorry, Bruno, I have to look at that. And so it will, in a way, surprise you, or it will point out to your emotion at a moment. It will make you laugh or angry, or you will react. And so you will be willing to look at that message and spend time with that message. And at the same time, you will be willing to share it. Bruno, have you seen that? I will send that to you. I share it. So the more attention it grabs and the more viralization it produces, the more efficient the message is. And so when you, at a moment, I mentioned that before that the social networks would mix every kind of message, but after that, you have a chef d'orchestre, you have a director there. It's the algorithm. The algorithm is a simple math formula, and the chef d'orchestre will organize the messages, not like an editor in a newspaper, but they will organize the messages according to their efficient economy, to their economic efficiency. And so when you classify the economic efficiency of messages, it's very simple. The more, let's say, emotional the message gets, the more it goes through your to your belly here, to your guts, the more efficient it will be. And so in that case, news and information suffers a disadvantage in those networks. So the second disadvantage the news outlets have suffered with that new ecosystem is that even when their messages go into that system of social networks, and they have to go there, their efficiency, their visibility, and therefore also their profitability is disadvantaged in relationship to other kind of message. And this, for me, explains also the kind of polarization we have been suffering into our public squares.
Yeah, you write in the pamphlet, we've arrived at an era in which the structures of our networks connected to the economic model we just discussed and human nature gives a leg up to, across all disciplines, the domination of emotion, belief, and impulse. And you use this word democracy, which I'd not discovered before.
Well, because I try to invent it, but I'm not sure I will copyright the concept. But at the moment, because in fact, democracy is demos and kratos, normally the people and the power to implement something. So the game of words, democracy, is not very, maybe not scientifically accurate. But I wanted to say that it's the reign of emotion, in fact. So we are governed. We are governed by emotion, and so and I think if you really, because we talk about news fatigue, but this news fatigue gives birth to what? To democratic fatigue. If you know, there is a strong correlation in every country in the world. I say correlation and not causality. Correlation between two things: the trust you have in media, in information media, and the trust you have in institutions. So I mentioned in this small book what we call the public square. It's Jürgen Habermas, the German philosopher that tried to let's say to summarize the theory of public square. That if you want to have a democratic regime at the moment, you have to be able to have this kind of course, abstract space or square where people can debate and talk rationally about the same reality. So you share the same reality, and after that we have different opinions on a shared reality. And the job, if I may say so, of information is twofold. First, give you a sense of reality. Says this is what's happening now. It's we are not in a place where we're just beliefs, but this is facts. This is what's happening. But the second role, and it's always forgotten, and it's very important, what journalists called agenda setting, is organizing this reality. Because in fact, we are surrounded by thousands and thousands of discussions, facts, etc. And the job of journalists also, by setting the agenda, is trying to organize the perception of reality. When I say that, it's very important, and I mentioned both Walter Lippmann, which is our father to everybody, and Gabriel Tarde, the French sociologist of the 19th century. It's important, and it's very important to point out that I'm not saying that journalists say or have to tell you what to think about this or this subject, but on what subject you should focus, given the reality we are. So this is what I try to mention when I said a shared sense of reality. In fact, say, this is the reality, and let's try to organize it in order for political parties, political debate, for things to organize our debate on the shared reality. So share facts, shared reality, and then after that, differences of opinion, and democracy is there, not to erase the differences of opinion, but to make them coexist in the same space. And so when you have a news fatigue, you don't have a sense of shared reality anymore. And if you don't have a sense of shared reality anymore, you cannot have a democratic debate. So this is why I call democracy, is you don't have a democratic debate, but just a debate on emotions with no sense of shared reality. And so at the moment, we are a little bit in danger, I guess.
And this discussion comes under the question, basically, why do this? You know, how does it serve us? And that's one discussion that you have. The other discussion is it serves us because it allows us to monitor power. Can you talk about that piece?
Yes.
And then we'll move on to solutions.
Yes. I said the three things that news has always, it gives me a sense of the world. It allows me to know how the powers exert their powers. But saying that, I never liked, but I know everybody's organizing, saying that the press is the fourth estate, or le quatrième pouvoir, which is said because it doesn't give you the reality of the press. The press empowers normally the people because, according to the theory, if a power knows that exercising its power the way it should not exercise it, breaking the law, breaking the rules, if people know that, then the fact to know that somebody or a power is not exerting its power the way it should exert it, then something will happen that at the end of the day things will change. It's not the press that change things, but the fact that the people knows the thing thanks to the press that produce the change. So this is why, according to the theory, lying to the press at a moment, it will give you some problems, or that having the press publishing that you broke the law would present a problem. In the democracy, it has not the same result anymore. It's like it's something that provokes, you know, every kind of emotion, but that in a way does not have the same impact as before. So this is why the whole building of the democratic regime and the way it should work, it's, to my point of view, today in a way threatened. And this is why we have to restore absolutely the fact that we have to inform ourselves, because it's like the basis, the first floor of the democratic building.
So I'm curious, because I was reading your other books around this discussion. How do you integrate this prescription to inform yourself into other advice that you've given across other books? So at the end of The Goldfish Generation, you say, protect yourself by constructing tech-free areas, preserve yourself by taking a break, slow down. You know, given that's some of your advice, where does informing oneself fit into this? And you describe it, I really like this, as it's kind of, you know, we're told to eat 5 fruits and vegetables a day. It's simply like a maxim that every day you inform yourself.
Well, in a way, this maybe I shouldn't use this expression because it was used by the Brexiters, but all the books say that we should take back control. Okay, Doc. So I'm not saying those instruments are, first of all, let me put it once again very directly, it's not a question of technology, but technology has brought us with an amount of content and message like we've never seen before. And if you look at the last development of ChatGPT and even ChatGPT 4 yesterday, it's just the beginning. So the flow of content, of news, of messages, of images, of sounds, that for my generation has been overwhelming these last 10 years, it's just a small beginning of what we are going to witness now, because you have absolutely no physical limit to produce any content you want. if you saw that, I read an article this morning about the end of Instagram. I always like those articles about the end of, every year, every day there is the end of what you're, the end of television, the end of radio, the end of Instagram, etc. But in a way, it was really interesting because the journalists there used ChatGPT to produce images. It's very simple. It took images. It sent ChatGPT 2 or 3 photos of Obama as a model and said to me, please create a photo with Obama with a hat, Obama, etc. And in less than 1 second, he had like, I think 200 or 300 photos of Obama that he would put on Instagram really easily. So this is, I'm not being paranoid about ChatGPT and alternative reality. I'm just saying that at the moment, the quantity of messages we will be confronted to is yet overwhelming, but it's just the beginning. I have no words. It's not a tsunami anymore. I don't know how to, the ocean is even bigger as before. So, and the second thing about the goldfish, which I was saying in the book, which I mentioned before when you asked me the question, is the problem of this ocean. It's, for the moment at least, a lot of time it's organized according to the economy of attention. So it's organized for economic reasons in order to maximize our attention. So in a way, it disadvantages some kind of messages, and in reality, it disadvantages rationality. If we started at the moment saying the Enlightenment said us, more information gives us free will, but the way now the ecosystem is built really disadvantages rationality. And I am not sure we can live together without rationality. So in a way, I said, what solutions we can imagine in order, in this new ecosystem, take back control. So I think there is a question of quantity, how to expose ourselves with less quantity of messages, because we are human beings, and when we are exposed to too many messages, nobody can cope with that. And how to put an end on the organization of messages. And this is another problem that I try to mention in that book. And this is another story.
So I suppose I think it was a kind of unfair question in the sense that I think it's entirely impossible to slow down, construct tech-free areas to inform oneself about the dangers of social media and continue to inform oneself. But I suppose...
No. I don't agree.
Oh, you don't think so?
No. Let's say, let me give you an example. When I was... I'm much older than you are. So I've known things. When I started to be a journalist, you could not enter. I love movies about journalists. But today, when you see movies about journalists, American movies about journalists, there is something that is really completely inaccurate. Even when when Spielberg writes films about the Washington Post during the Pentagon Papers, or when you have something completely inaccurate, because I can tell you that when I started to be a journalist, when I entered the newsroom, you had this giant smoke in the newsroom because people were smoking and drinking all the time. And I remember very well that the first time the rule came because of the law saying that now you cannot smoke anymore in the office, everybody said it's the end of the press. And it was not. And now you see those wonderful movies that take place in the 70s and nobody is smoking into a newsroom. And for people that have known newsroom at that moment, it was the same in planes. The first time I went to the US, I was in the smoking, I didn't smoke myself. I went into the smoking section of a plane, and nobody can imagine today that half of the plane was covered with smoke. And so, no, this is not true that we cannot have place. I'm not talking about tech-free areas, but places and moments where you disconnect. I'm absolutely sure not only that is possible, but that in 1 year, 2 years, you will have them multiply. I'm sure of that.
No, I agree. I agree. I think that was what I was saying, is it's possible to have these tech-free places and continue to inform oneself simultaneously. But I want to ask you, because we turned to very 10 minutes of audience questions, not more. In terms of specifically, what does informing oneself look like, in the sense of, is it once a day, twice a day? Do you choose one outlet that you find is trustworthy? Do you have it on your phone? I mean, would you go so far as to be that prescriptive, or would you say everyone find, you know, their happiness and follow that path?
You remember this title of the movie, Whatever Works? But I can tell you what works with me, but it seems that it works for a lot of people, because when you look at the figures, first of all, and I don't know why, but it's certainly a good thing, every time you look at figures, people inform themselves early in the morning. We are these kind of animals, I think. We wake up and we want to know what's happening around the world and around ours. And even on the digital area, we can measure at what moment people are connecting themselves to inform, or maybe because they just woke up. So first thing, in the morning. Second thing, you mentioned that I'm running a TV channel. I'm a strong believer. You know, let me tell you that. I was working for Le Monde when the internet appeared. And I belong to the team that developed the monde.fr, so the first people working on the news site. And at that moment, we were absolutely sure we had to publish everything we could publish. And that if we had, okay, 100, 200, 500, 600, 700, 800 articles, 900, 1,000 articles on the news site, we were the king of the universe. We had to give everything possible to the audience. Okay. And today, if you look at Netflix, they said, you know, we have 40,000 films in Netflix, which is true. If you look at the streaming, Spotify will say to you, we are uploading 100,000 titles a day, which is, the figure is true. I'm not making that up. So, okay. So we have, I think, because my generation has lived with scarcity of news, scarcity of image, scarcity of sound. At a moment, we said, let's forget about boundaries, let's forget about limits, and let's push. The more content we can push, the better off we are. We forgot about one thing, is that there is something that is really scarce and gets more and more scarce as it's our time. And so the more you push, the more content you push, in fact, the less sensible you have to your audience, people, scarcity of time. So my belief as a professional today is to try really to address that question, that time is really precious for the people I'm talking to or my addressing to. And so I said, the information new regime or diet, when I mentioned the information diet I try to have is in the morning, okay, but also try to focus on products, information products, and I put that quote unquote, that I can start and that I can end. And this is a question of respect. So when we started the news sites a long time ago, newsletter was a tool we had, and then everybody forgot about newsletters because we can do a lot of things. And now newsletters are coming back. Why? Just because you start and you end. You know when you start, you know when you end. And if you look, I'll give you an example. 20 years ago and 25 years ago, in France at least, what we would call the news session, the average time somebody would spend during the day to get some news would be 27 minutes. Today, it's 9 minutes. So I was talking about diminishing return. So we divided by 3 the time we spent to inform ourselves. whereas the news, the available news, has been increasing in a way that I cannot calculate.
Thank you. Can we have a big round of applause, please? Thank you. Thank you. So we have time for 2 questions, so I have to be very quick.
Let's say 4 questions.
Okay, 4 questions. But your secretary is going to absolutely kill me.
Yes, as she will kill me too. You know.
Hi. We are living in the information age where governments are increasingly starting their own news channels. We had BBC World for a long time. France 24 came up. Chinese have CGTN. Russians, they have RTV, which is banned in France. Do you think in the information age, 20 years from now, would it make sense for the government to put public taxpayers' money in these channels? Thank you.
There is something, I will not answer directly your question, but in a way, there is something I strongly believe, and in a way, Polestar showed it also. It's that news, with the 3 letters we mentioned, it's not simple to finance news through the market. So I'm telling you, at the moment, the cost of news, the economic model of news, it's what I also write in the small history. The moment, let's say, honest and general news was profitable, we're not in that moment anymore. So, of course, we have private news outlets that are making a living, but they are more limited than they were before. The number of them are more limited than they were before, and they are strongly, in a way, located in great and big markets. My belief, second aspect of the question, I strongly endorse the view of Jürgen Habermas that news is a public good because of the externality of news. And the externality, we mentioned them. First externality is try to not regulate, but let's say in a way to monitor the way the powers exert their power. And second thing, organizing the public square. And so these externalities, what we call in economy, were at a moment captured by the market, but are not anymore. And so this gives normally the reason for the public intervention into news outlet, if it was your question, in a way. Thank you. I understand. I know that. But in a way, let's say public intervention because it's a public good. I didn't say governmental intervention, which is not the same thing. I absolutely agree with you. But this is also a question of democratic maturity. I think the maturity of a democracy is when you can separate, let's say, the fact that you have public broadcasters or public media, which are not governmental media. And it's not automatic. I absolutely agree.
Hi, thank you for being here. I want to go back to the 3 initials, and you nuanced the difference between independent and objective, and I would like you to elaborate on that nuance a little bit, if you could, please.
Oh, this is a very good question. Objectivity, it's a myth. If objectivity stands that the journalist is not a human being, but a kind of neutral machine. I think all what science has taught us is that we are not neutral, even when we are witnessing a scientific experiment. The fact that we are witnessing this experiment has a consequence on this experiment. So for news, can you imagine that? So that would be the theoretical, the theoretical answer. But I think there is something we can elaborate a little bit today. the question of objectivity today, or trying to say journalism is neutral or objective, provokes two negative consequences for me. The first negative consequences is a professional one, what I call both-sidism, and it's called both-sidism in the US. You know, it's Jean-Luc Godard at a moment that gave the most powerful definition of both-sidism. You want to be neutral when you speak about the Holocaust. It's 5 minutes for the Jews and 5 minutes for Hitler, and then you're objective. So this both-sidism, of course, is a incredible professional danger because it has nothing to do with information. It's just giving some time of microphone to people that do not agree. But the second thing, maybe, is a question about trust. Today, when you look at, let's say, the distrust that is increasing towards the media outlets, it's say, you have this opinion too. Of course, media have values. Even Walter Lippmann in 1922, he gave the theory of that. He said every newsroom has opinion, is receptive to the zeitgeist, as belief. So in a way, I strongly think that the way you can exercise your job today when you are a journalist is being honest with your opinion while respecting the three layers. So if a fact goes in reverse to your opinion, it's a fact, independent, etc. But I guess, like we say in French, il faut dire d'où on part. I work for a channel that has a certain kind of values, and we share that. Of course, we are pro-European. We believe in Europe, of course. So we are not, etc., etc. So I think, and we know that, we know that. So I think it's, in a way, the transparency about your opinion, your values, it's a way to restore trust that is being a little bit threatened from time to time.
Thank you. Yes, one more, I think.
Can you talk about Elon Musk and his public square Twitter?
So let's take 2 hours. No, it's a fascinating question, because first, nobody really knows what's in the head of Elon Musk. I have also written that in an article. Is he a tech genius? Yes, he is. Is he a neoconservative or let's say libertarian American? Yes, he is. He's sometimes behaving like those rock stars in the 70s when you go into a hotel room and you trash the hotel room. Yes, he does. And so the three things do not really fit with one another. So you never know which Elon Musk we are talking about. And you never know which Elon Musk you are facing when you're talking about Twitter. But let's take maybe the thing in a second way. Twitter is a very small social network. Economically speaking, it's not so great. Technically, as far as tech is concerned, it's not very inventive. But Twitter is the backdoor to the agenda setting. So it's the most influential social networks you have, because the media outlet we are talking about, the politicians use Twitter in order to set their own agenda. And so it's a very important tool because it's the backdoor, as some political scientists say, to the agenda setting of the US, of France, of a lot of countries. So in a way, economically speaking, it's not a lot of things. Even in terms of people that follow Twitter, you know, it's 5-6 millions in France. So it's nothing when compared to 28 or 30 millions for Facebook, for example. But as far as influence is concerned, is the gold medal of influence, because it goes into the mind of a newsroom and of politicians. Therefore, you have somebody tweeting, and the guy has 5 followers on Twitter, and it takes an incredible dimension because have you look what's on Twitter. So Elon Musk knows that, of course. He knows that he has bought for $44 billion, not a tech champion, not a giant social network, but a tool of influence that nothing can incomparable today. So what's he doing? I don't know. Because, there is the second rule in Twitter. We used to say that in Twitter, you don't want to be the person people are tweeting about. Because if you are the person the people are tweeting about, certainly you're having a rough time. And what was interesting was he took control of Twitter and he went to be that person. So he paid $44 billion and he said, I want to be the person that people are tweeting about. And of course, sorry for the word, but all the shitstorm came and he was kind of surprised. But of course, ça marche comme ça. It works that way. So he shouldn't be surprised. And so after that, 2 or 3 just remarks for that. The first remark is that sometimes he obviously wants to change the business model, well, adding to the attention economy, the subscribing economy, and having a 2 version of Twitter, which is at the moment you pay. You pay for that network, then messages will be organized all the way. So maybe if you look at the economic direction it's taking, you said, well, this could in fact depolarize in a way Twitter, or maybe much worse, have 2 Twitters in reality, the depolarized version of Twitter and the polarized version of Twitter if you don't pay. But then you look at the way he behaves, and he said, Twitter is the tool I want to manage. So I don't want the algorithm to manage Twitter. I want to manage Twitter. So my account is, my messages are not shared. So let's move the algorithm. So in a way, it behaves like a rock star in this way. So I really don't know. What is sure is that everybody thought that everybody would quit Twitter with Elon Musk being there, and we have not observed that. The number of users is going up. I find personally that the disorder in messages, it's a mess like it was never before. And it was supposed to be organized a little bit. And I'm not sure yet we have seen the dark side of the political tool he wants to turn Twitter in. The good news is the changes are strong, but not as strong as we could. The bad news is there is really a solidity of Twitter that maybe we can imagine that he could really turn this instrument into an instrument for his political agenda or economic agenda without being, let's say, without provoking a decrease in Twitter's influence. And that's very worrisome. So I'm sorry, I have no answers.